Welcome back. In this video, I'll be dealing with the topic nutrient cycling. You should remember that nutrients are never lost from the ecosystem. They are recycled time and again indefinitely. And this process of movement of nutrients from the abiotic to the biotic and back to the abiotic environment is called nutrient cycling. It is also known as biogeochemical cycles. There are two types of nutrient cycles, namely gaseous cycle and the sedimentary cycle. The basic difference between these two cycles is that the gaseous cycle has the reservoir as the atmosphere, whereas the sedimentary cycle has the Earth's crust as its reservoir. In this video, we can see one example of the gaseous cycle in detail. There are a number of gaseous cycles. For example, there is the oxygen cycle, carbon dioxide cycle, nitrogen cycle, etc., etc. We are going to deal with the carbon cycle. Similarly, among the sedimentary cycle, there is a calcium cycle, sulfur cycle, phosphorus cycle, etc., etc. We will be dealing with the phosphorus cycle. So, one sedimentary cycle and one gaseous cycle will be dealt. So, the basic difference here I hope you have understood between the two cycles, gaseous or sedimentary cycle. Gaseous cycle, the reservoir is the atmosphere, whereas sedimentary cycle, the reservoir is the earth's surface or the rock. Now, we are going to deal in detail with the carbon cycle, which is an example of the gaseous cycle. Before going into the details of carbon cycle, let us know something about carbon, which deals with certain numbers. Nearly 49% of the dry weight of our body is carbon. Next to water, we know major composition is water, and 49% of the dry weight of our body biomass is carbon. As I told you earlier, carbon cycle is an example of gaseous cycle, and therefore the reservoir is the atmosphere. But it is found that nearly 71% of this carbon is found in the ocean. And another figure to remember, the plants fix nearly 4 into 10 raised to 13 kgs of carbon dioxide in its biomass annually by photosynthesis. So, these figures are important from the point of view of 1 marks. So, once again 49% of the dry weight of our body is carbon, next to water. Then we know that carbon dioxide or carbon cycle is a gaseous cycle, therefore the atmosphere should be the reservoir, but it is found that 71% of the carbon is found in the ocean, dissolved in the ocean. And lastly, the amount of carbon dioxide fixed by the plants during photosynthesis is nearly 4 into 10 raised to 13 kgs per year. So, from this what we should understand is plant more trees, because the carbon which is, or carbon dioxide which is a greenhouse gas which results in global warming, can be fixed and can be trapped by planting trees and plants and shrubs and herbs. So, they fix the carbon dioxide and makes the environment cool. Now, coming back to the cycle. The cycle given in your textbook is this. They have given it in a picturesque manner. Now, we have to convert this into a cycle, or we have to crack questions coming from carbon cycle. So, from that point of view, I am going to redo the cycle under two headings: fixers and contributors. Anyway, the reservoir of carbon is, or carbon dioxide is, the atmosphere. So, it is shown here, it is present in the form of carbon dioxide. Now, we are going to see on one side the contributors of carbon dioxide. So, first let me bring animals. How do we contribute to the carbon dioxide in the atmosphere? by way of respiration. Plants similarly by way of respiration. Decomposers, bacteria, fungi. The process of decomposition gives a lot of carbon dioxide. Then, during volcanic eruptions, forest fires, and other natural calamities, a lot of carbon dioxide is released. And last contributor is fossil fuels, which are used for running machineries, factories, vehicles, automobiles, etc. Petrol and diesel. When it undergoes combustion, a lot of carbon dioxide is released. So once again, the contributors of carbon dioxide to the environment: by plants by the process called respiration, from animals by the process of respiration, by the bacteria, fungi by the process of decomposition, volcanic eruptions, forest fire, etc. results in the release of carbon dioxide. Then by the combustion of fossil fuels used in machinery, a lot of carbon dioxide is released into the environment. Got it? The contributors. Now, the fixers. Definitely we know only the plants are the fixers of. So we have the plants that fixes, and the process by which it fixes is photosynthesis. And also we have a lot of this carbon dioxide dissolved in the oceans. They dissolve in water in the oceans and gets incorporated in the shells of the molluscans, and that's how we have the calcareous sediments. And we know finally the ultimatum of calcareous sediments, they form the rock, sedimentary rocks, limestone and other sedimentary rocks which has a lot of calcium. So we can see the fixers, major fixers are the plants by the process of photosynthesis. And I gave you the figure, how much, what is the rate and the quantity of carbon dioxide fixes 4 into 10 raised to 13 kgs per year is fixed by the plants. So much fixation by the process of photosynthesis is done by the plants. Then a lot of carbon dioxide dissolves in the water of the oceans and gets incorporated in the shells of the molluscans to form the calcareous sediments, which are responsible for the formation of limestone, marble, etc. So this is the cycle that is given in a picturesque manner in your textbook. Actually, the cycle goes like this way: contributors and fixers. So once again, reiterating the contributors. We have the plants which contribute by respiration. Next we have the animals, again contributing by respiration. By the process of decomposition, by the decomposers like bacteria and fungi, again carbon dioxide is released. Then by forest fires and volcanic eruption, lot of carbon dioxide is released. And by the combustion of fossil fuels, a lot of carbon dioxide is released into the atmosphere. And from this atmosphere, it is the plants that fixes the carbon dioxide by the process of photosynthesis, and some of the carbon dioxide gets incorporated in the shelled creatures or in the molluscans to form limestone, marble, etc. That is because this carbon dioxide can dissolve. It's more soluble than oxygen. It dissolves in the water and gets incorporated in the shelled animals to form these calcareous sediments. I hope you have understood the cycle, carbon cycle. Next, moving on to the phosphorus cycle, which is an example of a sedimentary cycle. The same diagram is pulled out from your textbook. See the sedimentary cycle. We know the earth's crust, and in the earth's crust or in the rocks, the phosphorus is in the form of phosphates. And due to the process of weathering, what happened? This phosphate is released into the soil in solution form. and this is easily taken up by the plants during the process of photosynthesis. And some of the phosphate is lost during runoff or rains. They seep into the lower strata. Then from the producer, the phosphate reaches the consumers. How? Very simple, by eating. And these consumers, the phosphate has reached their body. From these consumers, it goes to the decomposers. How? When they die, it gets decayed. Both plants and animals are decomposed or degraded by the decomposers, mainly here, which is the bacteria? The phosphate bacteria. And then we get back the phosphate in soil in solution form. Clear? So, though we started with the rock, it is from the soil, it is being cycled. So, once again, phosphate is present in the earth's crust or in the rock in the form of phosphate. By the process of weathering, it gets into the soil, and from the soil it is absorbed by the roots of plants during photosynthesis, and from the plants it is eaten by the animals, and when the animals and plants die, they are acted upon by the decomposers by the process of decomposition and gets back to the soil. So, you can see this phosphate, how it is being cycled. Finally, I wind up with the differences between the two cycles. Of course, one is a gaseous cycle, the other one is a sedimentary cycle. Besides that, so other differences between the carbon cycle and phosphorus cycle, definitely carbon cycle, the first difference, it is a gaseous cycle where the reservoir is the atmosphere. Whereas phosphorus cycle is a sedimentary cycle where the earth's crust is the reservoir. So, that is the first difference. That is with respect to the reservoir. The second difference between the carbon cycle and the phosphorus cycle is the atmospheric inputs of carbon is higher than the atmospheric inputs of phosphorus in the form of rain. How is phosphorus got back from the atmosphere? In the form of rainfall. The input is very less. More input is by carbon dioxide. Atmospheric input of carbon is high compared to the atmospheric input of phosphorus. And atmospheric input of phosphorus only in the form of rains, whereas the atmospheric input of carbon is by photosynthesis. So, it is found to be the atmospheric input is very negligible or less in phosphorus. Third difference is gaseous exchange between plants or organisms and environment is again more in the carbon cycle and very negligible. That means nothing in the phosphorus cycle. So, once again, the differences between the two cycles, carbon cycle is a gaseous cycle, therefore, the reservoir is atmosphere, whereas phosphorus cycle is a sedimentary cycle, therefore, the reservoir is the earth's crust. Besides that, the difference, atmospheric inputs of carbon is higher. Atmospheric inputs is by photosynthesis, very high, whereas atmospheric inputs of phosphorus in the form of rainfall is less. Third difference or the last difference, gaseous exchange between organisms and the environment. Here, organisms, plants and the environment is more in the in the carbon cycle, whereas it is negligible in the phosphorus cycle. I hope you have understood the differences between the two cycles, carbon cycle and phosphorus cycle. So, with that, I wind up both the cycles coming under nutrient cycling. Thank you.